Imagine you are the captain of the Titanic. The night is dark, the sea is calm, the music is playing, but you have a map that shows exactly where the iceberg is. And yet, you keep the engines at full speed. For 500 years, the history of the world has been a history of shipwrecks. Every single global superpower has followed the exact same path. They rise from the ashes of war. They build unstoppable economies. They become the masters of the world. And then, they commit suicide. We look at the United States today with its aircraft carriers, its stock market, its global influence, and we think, this is forever. But the Spanish Empire thought they were chosen by God. The British Empire thought the sun would never set on them. The Soviet Union thought their ideology was scientifically invincible. They were all wrong. History is not a straight line. It is a circle, a big cycle that repeats every 250 years. Spain collapsed in the 1600s. Britain lost its empire by 1954. The Soviet Union disintegrated in just 900 days. 3 different empires, 3 different centuries, 3 different cultures. But if you overlay their economic charts, they look identical. They all went through the 7-stage collapse pattern. Stage 1, good money. Stage 2, public works. Stage 3, great prosperity. Stage 4, the debt bubble. Stage 5, money printing. Stage 6, internal war. Stage 7, the reset. The terrifying reality is not that the United States might fall. The reality is that the United States has already completed 5 of these 7 stages. We are currently living deep inside Stage 6. In this documentary, we are not just going to talk about theories, we are going to travel back in time. We will walk through the golden streets of 16th century Madrid, we will stand in the smog of 19th century London, and we will witness the silent, freezing collapse of 20th century Moscow. We will show you the exact moment they ignored warning signs, and we will show you why America is next. Let's begin our autopsy in the year 1492, the birth of the first true global superpower, the Spanish Empire. Spain didn't just become rich, they won the lottery of history. When Christopher Columbus opened up the Americas, and the conquistadors toppled the Aztecs and Incas, they didn't just find trade routes. They found mountains of silver and rivers of gold. Ships loaded with treasure sailed into the port of Seville every single week. This was stage 1, good money. The Spanish real became the world's first global currency. It was trusted from the markets of China to the banks of Europe. If you had a Spanish coin, you had real wealth. With this unlimited cash, Spain entered stage 2, maximum power. They built the greatest navy the world had ever seen, the Spanish Armada. They constructed grand cathedrals, sprawling palaces, and dominated global politics. They were untouchable. This led quickly to stage 3, massive affluence. And this is where the rot began. Life in Spain became too easy. Think about it. Why would you build a factory, or farm the land, or innovate, when you can just take gold from the ground in Peru? The Spanish elite stopped producing and started consuming. They imported their clothes from Flanders. They imported their weapons from Germany. They outsourced their labor. They became arrogant. They became complacent. They forgot that wealth comes from work, not just from having money. But then, the pattern turned. Maintaining a global empire is incredibly expensive. Spain was fighting wars on every front. Wars in the Netherlands, wars with England, wars with France. The gold from America was flowing out even faster to pay for armies and fleets. So, they entered stage 4, the debt bubble. The Spanish crown did something that sounds very familiar today. They started borrowing. They borrowed massive amounts of money from Italian bankers to fund their lifestyle and their wars, using future gold shipments as collateral. And when the loans ran out, they moved to stage 5, currency debasement. King Philip decided to tamper with the currency. They started mixing copper into the silver coins. They made the coins smaller. They literally printed fake money before printing presses existed. The result was the price revolution. It was one of the first cases of hyperinflation in Europe. The cost of bread skyrocketed. The Spanish middle class was wiped out. The rich, who were close to the king, got richer. The poor starved in the streets of the richest empire on earth. By the late 1600s, the mighty Spanish Empire had defaulted on its debt not once, not twice, but 7 times. The superpower that owned the world ended up a bankrupt, third-rate nation, broken by its own greed. The cycle took about 150 years. But history was just getting started. Fast forward 2 centuries. The torch of power had passed to a small, rainy island nation, Great Britain. Britain followed stage 1 perfectly. They didn't have free gold like Spain. They had something better, the Industrial Revolution. They created wealth by making things: steam engines, textiles, railways, steel. They worked hard. They saved. The British pound sterling became as good as gold. Literally. For nearly 100 years, you could walk into a bank in London with a paper pound note and exchange it for a fixed, guaranteed amount of gold. This trust created stage 2, dominance. By 1900, Britain controlled 25% of the Earth's land surface. The sun literally never set on the British Empire. Stage 3, affluence. Victorian London was the center of the universe. The British elite lived in unimaginable luxury, but just like the Spanish before them, they became arrogant. The younger generation forgot grit of their grandfathers. They focused on banking, finance, and high society, rather than manufacturing and industry. Then came the trigger, stage 4. For Britain, the turning point was 1914, World War I. War is the fastest way to bankrupt an empire. To fight the Germans, Britain had to spend more money than it had ever saved. They borrowed heavily. And who did they borrow from? The rising power across the ocean, the United States. When the war ended, Britain was drowning in debt. But instead of shrinking their lifestyle, they tried to maintain their global status. They entered stage 5, leaving gold. In 1931, unable to pay debts, Britain broke the promise. They detached the pound from gold. They devalued their currency to pay off their creditors with cheaper money. The world noticed. Trust evaporated. The final nail in the coffin was the Suez Crisis of 1956. Britain tried to assert its military power in Egypt to secure the Suez Canal, but the United States, now the world's banker, simply made a phone call. They threatened to crash the British pound by selling off British debt if the army didn't withdraw. Britain retreated in humiliation. In that single moment, the empire was officially dead. The pound collapsed as the global reserve currency. The cycle was complete. Now, let's look at a more recent example, the Soviet Union. Their cycle was shorter, compressed into just 70 years, but the pattern was exactly the same. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a titan. Stage 1 and 2. They had massive heavy industry, vast oil reserves, and a military that terrified the West. They rebuilt a shattered nation into a nuclear superpower in record time. But their stage 3, affluence, was an illusion. It was built on high oil prices and fear, not on a sustainable economy. By the 1982nd, they entered stage 4. The costs were mounting. They were fighting a costly, unwinnable war in Afghanistan, their own Vietnam. They were trying to keep up with the American Star Wars defense program, spending billions they didn't have. They ran out of money, so they entered stage 5. The government printed rubles to keep the factories open and the soldiers paid. But because the economy wasn't producing anything people wanted, there was nothing to buy. People had pockets full of money, but the shelves were empty. The black market became the real market. A pair of American blue jeans was worth more than a stack of rubles. This led directly to stage 6, internal conflict. The people lost faith in the system. The different republics, Ukraine, Georgia, the Baltics, started to demand independence. The internal cohesion shattered. The ideology that held them together evaporated. On the 25th of December 1991, the Soviet flag was lowered over the Kremlin for the last time. The superpower that rivaled America vanished in a heartbeat. The currency became worthless toilet paper. The savings of millions of people were wiped out overnight. It happened fast. It happened violently. And it happened because they ignored the math. 3 empires: Spain, Britain, USSR, different languages, different cultures, different centuries, but the same 7-stage pattern. Now, let's overlay this template onto the United States of America. Stage 11945. America emerges from World War II with 80% of the world's gold and the strongest industry. The dollar is king. Stage 2. 1000. 950 seconds, 60 seconds. The Golden Age, massive growth. The American Dream, Stage 3 970 seconds, 90 seconds. The peak. But we started borrowing. We started importing more than we exported. We shifted from a manufacturing economy to a financial economy. Stage 4, 2000s, the era of debt. Just like Rome had border wars and Britain had WWI, America had the War on Terror and the 2008 financial crisis. We spent trillions we didn't have. Our national debt exploded from $5 trillion to $35 trillion in just 2 decades. Stage 5, 2020, present, money printing. This is the undeniable smoking gun. In 2020 alone, the United States printed nearly 40% of all US dollars in existence. Just like Spain diluted the silver, just like Britain left the gold standard, we are debasing the currency to keep the system alive. Asset prices are skyrocketing. The stock market is at all-time highs, while the real economy struggles. This is the classic illusion of Stage 5. So, what comes next? Stage 6. Internal conflict and external challenge. Look around you. Internally, the country is more polarized than at any time since the Civil War. Red versus blue. The wealth gap is at levels not seen since the 1920 seconds. The have-nots are angry at the haves. The internal cohesion is gone. Externally, the challengers have arrived. The BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China are actively trying to build a new payment system to bypass the dollar. They are dumping US debt. They are buying gold at record rates. They know the history. They know the pattern. And they are betting on the collapse of the American empire. So, are we doomed? History says the cycle always completes. No empire rules forever. The math always wins. But collapse doesn't always mean Mad Max. For Britain, it meant a decade of hard times and a loss of global power. But life went on. The currency devalued. Living standards dropped, but the nation survived. However, for those holding cash, bonds, or trusting the government to save them, the reset is devastating. When the music stops, wealth doesn't disappear, it transfers. It transfers from the creditors to the debtors, from the currency holders to the asset holders, from the unprepared to the prepared. We are standing at the end of a 75-year debt supercycle. The math is undeniable. The United States is at Stage 5, transitioning violently into Stage 6. The question isn't if Stage 7 will happen. The question is, what will you own when it does? History is a circle. It's turning again. Don't be on the wrong side of the rotation. This is the Legacy Hustle. Subscribe to survive the shift.